Under the shadow of crumbling towers on the outskirts of the alien city, 4 small figures huddled together. Their skin shimmered with a faint azure hue, their wide eyes full of hunger and fear. The streets were crowded with merchants, travelers, and citizens, yet none stopped to notice the little girls who clutched one another for warmth. To the locals, they were invisible, the discarded orphans of a war nobody wanted to remember. Kalen, a human trader newly arrived on the planet, walked briskly down the same street. His ship was low on supplies, and he had little time to waste before the markets closed. Yet his pace faltered when he caught sight of the children. They weren't begging, not even reaching out for scraps, just staring at the ground with hollow, defeated eyes. Something about their silence unsettled him. He slowed, pretending to check the straps on his satchel, while studying them out of the corner of his eye. Their clothes were ragged and smeared with dust, their bare feet cracked and bruised from the rough cobblestones. The youngest clutched a piece of broken toy, its edges worn smooth from too much holding. Kalen's chest tightened, and he realized that while everyone else walked past, he couldn't. Approaching carefully, he crouched to their level, resting his forearms on his knees. "Are you hungry?" he asked gently, his voice pitched low so as not to startle them. The girls flinched, shrinking closer together like sparrows bracing against a storm. Their eyes flicked to him wide with mistrust, then back down to the ground. They had likely learned the hard way that strangers meant danger. Kalen reached into his pack and pulled out a ration bar. Slowly he unwrapped it, snapping it in half to show it wasn't poisoned or laced with tricks. He placed the pieces on the ground within reach, then leaned back to give them space. The oldest of the girls, perhaps no older than 10, hesitated. Her gaze darted between the food and his face, searching for the hidden cruelty. Minutes stretched, until hunger overpowered fear. She snatched one piece, breaking it further to share among her sisters. Kalen watched silently, not moving as the girls devoured the bar in small, cautious bites. The act was desperate but not feral. They still tried to maintain a dignity far beyond their years. Something inside him hardened. Whatever had brought them to this point was unforgivable. "Do you have anyone? Parents? Family?" Kalen asked softly. This time the oldest girl raised her eyes to his. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no sound came. Instead, she shook her head, slow and deliberate. Kalen noticed how the others looked to her for every cue, like ducklings following their mother. She wasn't just their sister, she was their protector. The crowd around them carried on, indifferent, as if this quiet tragedy was as common as dust in the wind. Kalen's jaw tightened. He had seen hardship before in the outer colonies, but this was cruelty by neglect. He could already sense that if he walked away now, these girls wouldn't last another week. And no one else would care. He pulled out a flask and held it toward them. "Here," he said. The middle child reached out timidly, but the eldest caught her hand, wary of the gesture. Kalen didn't force it. He set the flask down and leaned back again. After a long pause, the eldest tested the water herself, sipping cautiously before passing it to the others. For the first time, their eyes softened just a little. Kalen offered a small smile. "My name's Kalen. I'm not here to hurt you." The girls exchanged looks, whispers barely audible. Finally, the eldest murmured something in their native tongue. Kalen didn't understand, but the tone carried the weight of trust reluctantly given. They had chosen, at least for now, not to run. The youngest crawled closer, curiosity outweighing fear. She reached out a tiny hand to touch the fabric of his sleeve, marveling at its texture. Kalen stayed perfectly still, letting her explore. It was such an innocent gesture, but he felt the gravity of it. It was the first step across the gulf between them. Kalen knew he couldn't solve the problems of an entire city, but he could make a choice here and now. He could give them food, water, and safety, even if only for tonight. A seed of determination planted itself in his heart. Maybe that was how history changed, not in grand speeches or battles, but in small acts of kindness when no one else cared. As dusk settled, Kalen motioned for them to follow him. He expected hesitation, maybe even refusal, but to his surprise, the girls rose as one. Their bare feet padded across the cobblestones behind him, their eyes fixed on the human who, unlike all others, had seen them. The decision was made. Their fates and his had just intertwined. He led them toward the edge of the marketplace where his small transport waited. The city lights flared to life behind them, illuminating the indifference of thousands. Kalen didn't look back. The weight of 4 fragile lives pressed on his shoulders, but he bore it willingly. After all, Sometimes the simplest choices echo the loudest across time. And though he didn't yet realize it, the choice he had just made would ripple far beyond this single night, reshaping the destiny of worlds. The transport's cabin was dim, lit only by the soft glow of the console. Kalen guided the children inside, watching as their small forms shuffled uncertainly across the grated floor. They clustered near the door, huddled together as though any moment they might be cast back into the streets. Kalen resisted the urge to reassure them with words. They had heard promises before, no doubt. Only action would matter. He rummaged through the storage compartment and pulled out sealed ration packs. He placed them on the table, then stepped back, giving them space. The eldest girl approached slowly, her sisters trailing behind like shadows. She opened one pack, sniffed it cautiously, and only when she was certain it was safe did she divide it evenly among them. Kalen's chest tightened at the sight. Even in hunger, she thought first of them. When they finished eating, Kalen brought out a blanket and gestured toward the bunks. The youngest yawned, her tiny body swaying with exhaustion, but none of them moved. Their eyes remained fixed on him, suspicion lingering despite the food. Kalen sighed and lowered himself onto the floor beside the console. "Sleep," he said softly. "I'll stay right here." The eldest watched him for a long moment before finally leading her sisters to the bunks. They curled up together under the blanket, their breathing uneven until fatigue won. Soon the soft rhythm of slumber filled the cabin. Kalen leaned his head back against the wall, staring at the ceiling, his thoughts restless. He hadn't planned for this. He'd only meant to pass through this world, not collect 4 souls along the way. Morning came with the faint hum of distant market noise. Kalen woke to find the girls still asleep, their faces softened by rest. For a moment he allowed himself a small smile, but the reality of their situation quickly sobered him. 4 orphan children unwanted by their own kind now looked to him. He had no authority, no plan, no right, only a stubborn unwillingness to abandon them. He decided to learn more. As the girls stirred awake, he pointed to himself. "Kalen," he said, tapping his chest. Then he gestured to them, inviting their names. The eldest hesitated, then placed her hand on her chest. "Sira," she said quietly. One by one, the others followed. Molly, Taya, and little Ren. Their voices trembled as if unused to being asked. Kalen repeated their names carefully, earning faint smiles from the younger ones. But when he reached Rin, she giggled, a sound so unexpected it startled even Sira. It was the first true spark of childhood he had seen in them. For a moment, the cabin felt lighter, as though the darkness of the city couldn't reach inside. Later, Kalen ventured out with Sira to gather supplies. The market was busier than ever, and eyes followed them wherever they went. Whispers rose, sharp and cutting, about the human dragging alien children behind him. Sira clutched his hand tightly, her head lowered as if expecting stones to be thrown. Kalen kept his shoulders square, glaring down anyone who dared linger too long. At one stall, a merchant sneered openly. "Orphans," he spat. "Not worth feeding. Best let the streets take them." Kalen's fists clenched, but he forced his voice steady. "I'll take the food." The merchant's smirk widened as he accepted the credits. Sira glanced up at Kalen, her eyes wide with confusion. Why had he endured the insult instead of walking away? Kalen offered no explanation, only handed her a piece of fruit as they left. That night, as the girls ate fresh food for the first time in months, Kalen knew he couldn't keep hiding them in his ship. The authorities would eventually come asking, and the city would not welcome his defiance. Yet he also knew leaving them behind was unthinkable. They had chosen him, and in their silent trust he felt a responsibility heavier than any cargo. Sira sat apart from her sisters, watching Kalen intently. Finally she spoke in broken common, her voice halting. "Why'd you help?" The question hung heavy in the air. Kalen met her gaze, searching for an answer. "Because no one else would," he said simply. Her lips parted as though to argue, but no words came. She only lowered her eyes, as if the concept itself was too much to grasp. As the stars stretched across the night sky outside the viewport, Kalen's decision crystallized. He would not abandon them, whether it meant staying on this forsaken world or carrying them away to the stars. He would fight for them. A human had stepped into their lives by chance, but he would remain by choice. What Kalen did not know was that the choice had already begun to ripple. In the crowded market, whispers had started spreading of the human who had taken in the unwanted children. Some scoffed, some ridiculed, but others wondered. And in that wondering, the first cracks formed in the wall of indifference that had suffocated the city for so long. By the time the girls drifted to sleep, curled together under the blanket once more, Kaylin realized the truth. History rarely changed with armies or treaties. Sometimes it shifted with something as small as the laughter of a child, or the stubborn kindness of one man who refused to look away. And he was already too far gone to turn back. The following days blurred into a rhythm of survival. Kaylin scavenged for food and medicine, while the girls learned to trust the space within the ship as their haven. Yet beneath that fragile peace simmered unease. Every time he walked the streets, Kaylin felt the weight of eyes following him, curious, disapproving, even hostile. He was a stranger in a city that had already abandoned its own, and kindness was a language many here did not understand. Sierra grew bolder, though. She ventured to ask questions, her comment halting but determined. "Why human? No fear?" she asked one evening as she watched him repair a fractured circuit panel. Kaylin paused, the glow of his tools reflecting off her wide eyes. "Because fear doesn't help anyone," he said. "If I let fear decide, I'd walk past you like everyone else, and I'd never forgive myself." Molly and Taya, the middle sisters, began following Kaylin around the cabin, mimicking his movements. When he reached for tools, they did too. When he checked rations, they counted beside him. They laughed softly at their mistakes, their shoulders easing little by little. For the first time since he'd met them, they looked like children rather than ghosts drifting through the world. One afternoon, Kaylin brought them outside the city walls. Under the pretense of needing fresh parts from a junkyard, the girls marveled at the open fields beyond the gray streets, their feet sinking into real soil instead of stone. Rin ran ahead, her laughter carrying across the breeze, and Sierra's stern voice scolded her even as her lips curved into the faintest smile. Kaylin watched them, his heart swelling with both joy and dread. How long could he keep them safe like this? That evening, trouble came knocking. 2 city enforcers approached the ship, their uniforms stark against the twilight. Kaylin stepped outside, shielding the doorway with his body. "What's the problem?" he asked, his tone neutral. One officer sneered. "Word is you've taken in strays. Against regulation. Those children belong to the state now." Kaylin's pulse quickened, but his face remained calm. "They belong with someone who won't throw them away," he replied. The officer's smirk widened as if Kaylin had said something amusing. "That someone isn't you, human. Hand them over or we'll take them." Inside the ship, he heard the faint shuffle of feet. The girls listening, afraid. He stood his ground. "They're not going anywhere with you." His voice carried a finality that surprised even himself. The officers exchanged looks, then one stepped forward, hand on his weapon. Before Kaylin could react, a voice rang out from the shadows. "Leave them." An elderly alien woman, wrapped in tattered robes, stepped closer. Her gaze burned with quiet authority. The officers faltered, uneasy under her stare. "You dare interfere, Elder?" One hissed. She lifted her chin. "I dare remind you that neglect is not law. These children survived because of him, not because of you. Touch them, and the city will know your shame." The officers hesitated, cursed under their breath, and finally retreated with promises to return. Kaylin exhaled, tension leaving his body in a rush. He turned to the woman. "Why help us?" She studied him for a long moment. "Because I've seen too many children vanish into those walls. You are not like the others. Perhaps you remind us of what we once were." Her words carried the weight of memory. Then she disappeared into the night as quickly as she had come. The girls rushed out, clinging to him. Sierra's hands trembled as she gripped his arm. "They take us?" she asked, her voice breaking. Kaylin crouched to her level, his hands resting gently on her shoulders. "Not while I'm here," he said firmly. It was a promise. And though he knew it would put him at odds with forces bigger than himself, he meant every word. The encounter shifted something. The girls no longer looked at him with mere gratitude. They looked at him with belief, as if he were a shield forged from their hopes. And in their eyes, Kaylin felt the crushing responsibility of that belief, because to fail them now would be worse than never helping at all. Over the next days, whispers grew louder in the streets. Some mocked the human who thought himself a savior, but others began to wonder if perhaps he was right. For the first time, alien merchants offered Kalen small discounts or slipped him extra food. Tiny gestures, but they meant everything. Kindness was spreading, hesitant and fragile, but real. At night, Kalen told the girls stories of Earth, of blue oceans and endless forests, of places where children laughed without fear of being taken. Their eyes shone in the dim light, each word painting worlds they could scarcely imagine. Rin curled against him, her tiny hand gripping his sleeve, unwilling to let go. Kalen realized then that he was no longer simply helping them survive. He was giving them a vision of something beyond survival. A future. And though danger loomed closer with each passing day, he understood a truth he could not deny. His path was tied to theirs now, inseparable. But somewhere in the city, those who profited from fear and abandonment had taken notice, and they would not allow one stubborn human and 4 orphaned girls to rewrite the rules so easily. The knock on the hull came at dawn, sharp and deliberate. Kalen's eyes snapped open, instincts surging before reason caught up. He motioned for the girls to stay quiet as he rose. Sierra clutched her sisters close, their breaths shallow in the dim cabin. Kalen opened the hatch only slightly, enough to see 3 enforcers flanked by a man in ornate robes, someone higher in authority. Trouble had arrived in full. Human, the robed official called, his tone dripping with disdain. You've made quite the spectacle, harboring abandoned miners, defying city protocol. This ends today. His gaze swept over the cabin's interior, narrowing when he spotted the shapes of the girls huddled inside. They are property of the state. Kalen's blood boiled at the word. They're not property, he said, voice sharp as steel. They're children. They deserve better than a system that throws them away. His defiance hung in the air like a spark in dry grass. The official's lips curled into a sneer. Your compassion is weakness. Hand them over or you'll face exile, perhaps worse. Before Kalen could reply, Sierra stepped forward. Her small frame trembled, but her voice rang clear in broken common. We had not things, we family. The words silenced the officials for a heartbeat. It was the first time Kalen had heard her speak with such strength. Pride surged through him even as danger pressed closer. The officers moved, reaching for their weapons. Kalen stepped fully into the hatch, blocking the way with his body. You'll have to go through me, he said, every muscle coiled. He expected a fight, but then movement stirred in the crowd gathering nearby. Dozens of bystanders, merchants, workers, even children, had come to watch. The elder woman from before emerged at the front, her robes billowing in the wind. Enough, she cried. Her voice carried like thunder. We see what you are. You let children starve in the shadows while this outsider offers them life, and now you call kindness a crime? Murmurs rippled through the crowd, rising into angry shouts. The official's composure faltered. Silence yourselves, he barked, but the crowd pressed forward, emboldened. Someone shouted, Let the human keep them. Another voice added, He's done more than the state ever has. The momentum shifted, a tide the enforcers could not control. For the first time, Kalen realized he wasn't alone. And the enforcers followed reluctantly. The crowd's jeers chased them into the distance, leaving behind a silence thick with disbelief. Kalen exhaled slowly, his legs nearly giving out from the tension. The girl spilled out of the cabin, clinging to him with trembling arms. Rin buried her face against his chest, her tiny voice muffled. Safe? Kalen tightened his hold, his throat tight. Safe, he whispered, though he knew it was a fragile truth. Still, in this moment, it was enough. The elder woman placed a weathered hand on Kalen's shoulder. You've done more than you realize, she said. By saving them, you've reminded us of who we should be. Today you changed something in the city. Her eyes softened. Do not underestimate how far that change can go. That evening, as the crowd dispersed and the city settled, Kalen sat with the girls under the stars. He told them stories again, but this time they weren't only listening, they were asking, dreaming, imagining. Sierra leaned against him, her eyes shining with determination. We make new life, she said firmly, as though declaring it to the universe itself. Kalen nodded, his heart heavy, yet hopeful. Yes, a new life. Together. For the first time, the words didn't feel like a promise he might fail. They felt like truth. He looked at the 4 girls, once shadows in the street, now radiant sparks of possibility. He realized that history had already shifted, not through him alone, but through their courage to hope again. In the days that followed, small acts of kindness began to ripple through the city. Merchants left food where hungry hands could reach.
Neighbors offered shelter to orphans.
It wasn't a revolution, not yet, but it was a spark. And at its heart was the bond between a human and 4 little girls who had once been invisible. Kaylin knew challenges lay ahead. Enemies, laws, even entire systems built on cruelty. But as Rin's laughter rang out beside him, as Molly and Taya squabbled playfully, as Sira's steady gaze burned with resolve, he felt ready. Whatever battles awaited, they would face them together. And in that unity, Kaylin understood a final truth. No empire, no decree, no cruelty could ever erase what they had built here. Not just survival, but family. And sometimes in the vast sweep of history, that was enough to change everything.